Thank you for joining us on New Vision TV. I'm Ruthina Seje. We are going to look at the news around Uganda, around East Africa, around the world, and later in the bulletin, we shall have our daily Pearl of Africa series and also a special report. We start off with the news around Uganda, where we look at stories making headlines across the country. Start off from Kampala. More than 500 graduates at Uganda Management Institute's 17th graduation ceremony held today graduated without gowns. This was caused by the suppliers there to deliver the remaining gowns of the total of more than 3,000. A lot of graduates that missed out was seen early morning on graduation day, stranded at the Institute's Human Resource Office, demanding that their gowns be availed. Their hopes of getting the gowns remained futile, seeing as there were no signs of the supplier coming to their rescue. Some resorted to wearing the graduation hood alone. New Vision TV viewed a notice for gowns issued on May 21st, but the institution administration maintains that notification was done earlier on. Whereas many suppliers of gowns were allowed to sell gowns at the institute, in the previous graduation ceremonies, the institute this time round contracted a sole supplier to make costume gowns for the institute's Golden Jubilee celebrations. Let's stick around in Kampala. Professor Apollo Nsimambi's body was this morning in Parliament, where MPs paid their final respect. Nsimambi was the longest-serving Prime Minister, leader of government business in Parliament. Later in the afternoon, the casket was taken to Makerere University, where the institute paid final respect to its first non-head of State Chancellor. Nsimambi, who spent the biggest part of his career life at the Ivory Tower, starting as a warden and rising through the ranks to become a chancellor, is highly respected in academic circles. News of his death on Tuesday sent shockwaves among those who had interacted with him in different aspects of life. Among these were his colleagues in the academia, former students and politicians. His former student, Dr. Chisamba Mgera, the former chairperson of the National Planning Authority, recalls his first encounter with the late as a first-year student at Makerere. We move on to Gulu District, where the Minister for Lands, Housing and Urban Development, Betty Amongi, announced that the Gulu city will get another 77 billion shillings to tarmac more city roads in the next 5 years. Amongi made the announcement during the commissioning of 13 roads by President Yoweri Museveni in Gulu. According to Amongi, the construction of the roads took 43.3 billion shillings. She said the city will get another 77 billion shillings to tarmac more roads.
Now, in the next 5 years, Your Excellency, again, you have directed and you have moved through cabinet that has approved additional money for this municipality to extend more roads, and you have allocated, Your Excellency, 77 billion again for Gulu municipality.
President Museveni reminded Ugandans to focus on modern farming in order to increase household income, since government jobs are not enough to employ the 41 million Ugandans.
Therefore, government jobs are not enough. As I speak today, all the government jobs put together, including the local government, there are 470,000. Even if you assume that each government worker has got 60 per home, his family, that means that 2.8 million Ugandans are benefiting from government growth.
2.8, kama milioni hiyo kama ya bora tutika nungo kwanza parlamenti.
They are benefiting from government jobs either directly or indirectly.
National news for Muslims. The director of Sharia in Uganda, Sheikh Ibrahim Kakungulu, has urged Muslims to look out for the moon on Monday evening. If sighted, it means Eid al-Fitr will be celebrated on Tuesday and will give Ugandans a long weekend. With Matters Day on Monday and Eid Day on Tuesday, next week's work days will fall short for 2 days because of the holidays. If the new moon does not appear on Monday evening, then Eid will certainly fall on Wednesday. News coming in from Buyukwe District. Healthy services have been interrupted with the temporary closure of a health center. The facility was closed after a heavy downpour resulted into flooding, destroying medicine and medical documents. The district deputy chief administrative officer, Issa Chito, said the premises located in Buyukwe Town Council have been submerged up to the window level. Moving on to Rukunjiri District, a man identified as Benson Wagaba died in the Thursday fire that gutted a milling machine, carpentry and welding workshop in Rabanyavo Cell along Rukunjiri Kanungu Road. According to the police, the deceased had parked his motorcycle looking at the fire when a gas cylinder burst, killing him instantly. The DPC Rukunjiri, Moses Nanuka, say they have not yet established the cause of the fire, which destroyed property worth millions of shillings. Let's close off the news around Uganda from Katakwi District. Now, a suspect allegedly committed suicide in Wusuk police station cells in Wusuk sub-county. Daniel Opio, 28 years, a resident of Atirali village in Ogema parish, who was on Tuesday evening arrested over an assault case, reportedly committed suicide in the night. Katakwi District Police Commander Tony Odonga confirmed that Opio committed suicide by hanging himself using a long-sleeved shirt. Odonga promised to unveil more details of the suicide as soon as the post-mortem report is released. There are unconfirmed reports that police would be behind the suspect's murder, since suspects complain of being tortured by police officers. Let's move on to the news around East Africa. We start from Southeast Sudan. The UN Security Council approved a resolution Thursday extending the arms embargo and other sanctions against Southeast Sudan over objections from African nations, Russia and China that the measure won't help promote peace. The US-sponsored resolution received 10 yes votes, one more than the minimum required for the adoption of 5 abstentions from South Africa, Ivory Coast, Equatorial Guinea, Russia and China. We move on to Kenya. The latest 75 billion shilling loan advanced to Kenya by the World Bank will swallow taxpayers with debt for 30 years, adding the burden on future generations to repay the country's mounting loans. The World Bank disclosed Thursday that the loan will be repaid until 2059 and that it has allowed the Treasury to start paying the principals in 2024, easing the quarterly payment costs. This means taxpayers will pay at least 1.5 billion shillings annually to the World Bank as interest in the first 5 years before Kenya starts paying the 75 billion shilling loan. We move on to Tanzania. President John Pombe Magufuli said his country had surplus maize after harvesting 16 million tons of the grain when only 13 million tons were necessary. Tanzania is to export 700 tons of maize to Zimbabwe, where, according to the UN, 15 million people face food insecurity following the El Nino-induced drought that wreaked havoc in Zimbabwe's agriculture sector and caused grain shortages. Zimbabwe appealed in April for $613 million in aid from local and foreign donors to cover food imports and help with a humanitarian crisis after a severe drought and a cyclone battered the east of the country. We close off the news around East Africa from Burundi. Burundi is threatening to cut ties with the UN envoy appointed to the country ahead of elections next year that the government of Bujumbura insists are internal matters, according to the UN diplomats. The UN Security Council abruptly scrapped a meeting on Burundi scheduled for Tuesday after Burundi's government made clear it was ready to end relations with Michael Kafando, Council diplomats said. Kafando, a former president of Burkina Faso, was appointed in 2017 to lead UN efforts in Burundi, which was wrecked by more than a decade of war that ended in 2016. France requested that the council hold a closed-door meeting in Burundi on Friday, but those talks were pushed back to June to allow time to defuse the situation. Let's move on to the news making headlines across the world. We start off from South Africa. Rwandans living in exile are in shock after a former bodyguard of President Paul Kagame was gunned down in Cape Town. Camille Nkurunziza becomes the second high-profile Rwandan in exile to be killed in South Africa after the killing of the former intelligence boss Colonel Patrick Karegeya in 2014. Nkurunziza has been a critic of President Kagame, accusing him of intolerance to dissenting views. Before he fled Rwanda, he started a campaign dubbed No Third Term for Kagame in bid to stop the amendment of the constitution to extend Kagame's stay in power. Nkurunziza's brother, Sergeant Innocent Karisa, is in prison in Kigali on suspicion of being a member of the Rwanda National Congress, an opposition outfit. Exiled former Rwandan Army Chief General Kayumba Nyamwasa has survived 2 attempts of his life in South Africa. The shooting of Nkurunziza comes nearly a week after President Paul Kagame was in South Africa attending President Cyril Ramaphosa's swearing-in ceremony. Let's move on to Romania. Pope Francis headed to Romania today with a message of integration, not just for its faith communities. During the 3-day trip to the mainly Orthodox country, which sits at the crossroads of Western and Eastern Europe, Francis is expected to touch on issues fueling nationalism such as poverty, as well as interreligious relations. And in Sri Lanka, Central Bank has cut its main lending rate in a bid to revive the island's economy, which was battered by the Easter suicide bombing that killed 258 people. The Central Bank of Sri Lanka said the rate at which it lent to commercial banks was reduced by 50 basis points to 8.5% to encourage borrowing and mitigate fallout from the bombings, which have scared off tourists. 45 foreigners were among the dead from the April 21st suicide attacks against 3 Christian churches and 3 luxury hotels that left nearly 500 people wounded. Moving on to Palestine, a Palestinian teenager was shot dead by Israel forces in the occupied West Bank this morning, the Palestinian Health Ministry said. In a statement, the ministry said Abdallah Gayethi, 16 years, died after he was shot by Israel occupation soldiers close to Bethlehem, and his heart and lungs were penetrated. We close off the news around the world from India. Now, Prime Minister Narendra Modi has named his trusted AD Amit Shah to the Key Home Affairs Ministry as part of a major cabinet shakeup for his second term in office. Nirmala Sitharaman moved from defense to become finance minister in a second shock, while career diplomat Shai Shakar became foreign minister. Meanwhile, the Uganda flag was displayed during Modi's swearing-in on Thursday by members of the Indian community living in Uganda. Among them was Pradeep Karia, Director of Property Services, Ramesh of Abacus Parentro Drugs Limited, based in Mukono, and Raju Hirani. That is it for the news around the world. We take a short break, but when we come back, we take a look at what's making headlines in business.